RootsTech, at the end of the day, becomes this really great community. And that's what you take away with it.
Today, I'd love to welcome Cheri Daniels to the podcast, who is going to talk to us about getting ready for RootsTech. As everyone knows, it's my first time going to RootsTech in person. I'm a little panicked about what to expect and what to plan. She's going to help us through that. But Cheri, welcome to the podcast. I'm thrilled that you could make it in time while you're doing your RootsTech preparations for 2024.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. So let's start off. I want to start off with just a little bit of an unusual question. No, let's get people grounded first in terms of your background at RootsTech. Give us a little bit of details of your involvement with RootsTech over the years, the first time you went, your experience as a speaker and presenter at RootsTech.
Sure. Goodness, this goes back to the very beginning, the first year. So I attended the very first RootsTech. I was not a speaker that year, but a business colleague of mine had been invited to give a couple presentations on semantic web and kind of the concept of one world trees and, the idea of having one ancestor, having one unique number and everything, which we see quite a lot now in the family search trees. And so I've always been really proud of that fact that he actually was Chris Starr. He was a business partner of mine at the time out of Massachusetts. And so he gave a couple presentations. We had a business at the time. And so we both went out there. It's a totally new concept. We did not know what to expect because, we'd been to the National Genealogical Society. We'd been Federation, FGS at the time. Those were the largest things we'd seen. And then we get there to the first year and they at least, I believe, from what I remember the numbers, I think they were at least double what NGS and FGS was already doing at the time as far as that. So they were only part of at that time, that first year, they were only the one part of the Salt Palace. So they were kind of a little bit relegated to one section, but it was wonderful. I loved the integration of the technology into the sessions. And there was a lot of backdoor conversations or side room conversations where you'd have developers and users and just, hey, can you do this? Or it'd be really great if we could tweak this in this area. And they really listened to each other and they had a great time. So that was the first year that I went. Right after that, I got a job at the Kentucky Historical Society as their senior librarian. And so I went out the very next year in 12. But it is a big trip. Like you're talking about, anxiety or going out there. And honestly, it's a big trip, especially I think being, I'm in Kentucky, you're in Pennsylvania. So, flying across the country and all of this, especially if you haven't done it before, it's not only expensive really at the end of the day and just it's a big deal. So I went out one more year with them and then I kind of took a little bit of a hiatus and then I was back out in 16. That was the first year that I spoke and skipped another few years. Like I didn't put in proposals every year. I just, because like I said, that's a big trip. So, but also what I love too is that even before COVID, they had a really great virtual presence. They were really engaging social media users, bloggers, everything. And so even if you didn't attend in person, again, I feel like they were trailblazers in that way. We're all so used to COVID pushing people in that way, but honestly, RootsTech was really great about embracing that social media technology for those who couldn't actually attend in person, because they did have quite a few that were already being live streamed, your keynote sessions and things like that. And social media people were just jumping on board and they still felt like they were somehow involved. And at one point, I remember years ago, there was even and I think they still use it, a hashtag of not at RootsTech. So, but it still felt like this energized community. And I'll never forget. RootsTech is one of those that I can't explain the energy and the buzz. Like once you're there, it's really amazing. But anyway, so back to my timeline, started speaking again in 2019 and I've been consistently doing that just because again, I probably wouldn't go in person every year. But because of COVID, we had, a couple of years there that were virtual. And then in 2022, I became the director of library and archives here at the National SAR Library in Louisville, Kentucky. I was already slated to speak. And so, part of that, again, I still may not go every year just because, but now that, NGS is virtual, has went back to virtual. FGS is no longer with us.
Right.
It is by default the largest genealogy conference in the world. And so,
Right. And yeah, and this year it's going to be the only in-person
yeah,
genealogy conference
yeah,
because even the Association of Professional Genealogists is virtual this year. So
yeah,
for anyone interested in upping their genealogy game or just having a relaxing, well,
yeah.
let's just put it as a genealogy focused weekend.
Yes,
Roots Tech
yes,
would be your best bet this year in
yeah,
2024. So that
absolutely.
sounds awesome. When you
Yeah.
do your presentations, what is your
Mhm.
specialty? What do you talk about?
Um, I have been, it's interesting. I think over the years, I have done a lot of social media tools, project management tools. I've done Airtable, I've done blogging, I've done Instagram, I've done, various things like that. But then also I've delved really, really, really deeply into stories. And I would
Mm,
say a lot of the I don't know if I want to call it like, the family secrets, but I'm a I am a very firm big advocate of the fact that I believe in telling a full story of an ancestor and not just romanticizing the good or vilifying the bad. That, like, we all have that dual nature in
mhm.
some way, in some percentages in there. We all good people can make bad decisions. They can do, and I love the deeper ramifications of knowing those stories and how it does affect us a lot. So, in fact, actually, if you go to the RootsTech site now, you can see several of my sessions that were recorded over the years. One of them was tackling difficult chapters of your family history.
Mm,
So, and that was in 2020, year right before we all came back and shut everything down. But that was probably my favorite one. I love that because even though somebody once told me that they were jealous of the amount of crazy stories in my family tree, I'm like, I just think you may not be searching hard enough for those. I think everybody has them, depending on which branch you follow. And,
right.
so those kinds of things. And now this time, let's see, last year, I gave I gave 6 sessions last year, but 2 of them were identical workshops on preserving your, actually it was historical photography. So it's a picture it workshop. It's hands-on workshop. And basically you learn about the historical um, construction of different types of photographs, and you get to hold them in your hand, and you learn about the time periods, what that might mean as far as the production, and to kind of help date them and everything. Of course, now with the revolution coming, we've got the 250th of the American Revolution coming up in 26. And so
Yeah.
I'm adding another session. The picture at workshop is coming back for 2024 this year as a repeat.
Yay. Okay.
And then the other session I'm giving this year is on finding underrepresented patriots in the family tree. So tying into the Revolutionary War with all of the various resources that are out there to help people locate more.
Awesome. Okay. So everyone can look, you can search for speakers by their name. So you can just put Cheri Daniels in the search box. And I bet it's just your first name because it's spelled uniquely. So
True.
Cheri, just type that into the
Yeah.
search box and you'll see all the presentations that she has coming up this year that you can sign up for and all the recorded ones that have been saved. And there's just been so
Yeah.
many Roots Tech presentations over the last 3 years.
There has
So I
been.
hope, that they're saved and linked into the
Yes.
app so
Yes.
people or website so people can find them.
Because COVID came around, then they really did push the virtual sessions. So you've got not only, what is it, 250 on-site presentations that maybe a portion of those will be recorded, but then they've got another like 200 at least, I think, that are just virtual only online. So, and over the years, they have captured those, and that, post-conference, you're looking at huge a huge tool for education, genealogy education, that's just right there anytime that you want to. Although it's funny, you mentioned my first name, actually, Sherry Hudson Passy, and you might run into her stuff too. So
Oh, that's right. How
it's
could I
identical.
forget? Yeah. There's 2 of you.
Yeah,
We
there's
always
2 of
have to
us.
have 2 people with the same name. It's a genealogy
Of
thing,
course.
like in
Yes,
any area.
absolutely.
That's right. Oh, that's funny. I think she's going to send me an email.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me get down to the the brass tacks here of like this advice. So
Yeah.
what is some like unusual thing that you do to prepare for Roots Tech now that you've gone a bunch of times? So not the typical advice, like, you know,
Right.
what is
Yeah.
something like a Cheri unique tip that we can
Oh,
incorporate
goodness.
into our preparation?
You
And
know,
whether
yeah,
we're
go ahead.
doing it online or in person. So if you have something
Right.
for each audience, because, you know, I
Right.
think we've got a big audience in each
Yeah.
direction.
Um, online, honestly, I think, the world is your oyster. You get to sit back in your PJs and just really enjoy it. I would also, though, really tie into a lot of the social media accounts that are promoting and just talking about Roots Tech, because Roots Tech at the end of the day becomes this really great community. And that's what you take away with it. You meet so many people, and like I said, the buzz and the energy of Roots Tech, I would say in person and online, honestly. In person, yes, I will just say you're usually not prepared for the energy that is Roots Tech.
Okay.
Because if you think about the feelings that we get, the really energized feelings we get when we've broken through a brick wall or something like that,
Mm.
that elation that we get, and that, you're surrounded by the people who know what that feels like, and they speak your language. These are our people. This is our tribe. I mean, they just, and so the stories that come out of it and the new tools that we're exposed to, it's a flood of information. And usually when you get home, you're really shell shocked. I mean, you get home and you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do with all of this that I've just done? I would say my biggest tip, really, this actually ties back to something that happened last year, because I think it has allowed me to encapsulate what this really a similar experience. So the SAR Congress, National Congress, is in Orlando, Florida this past year, and I had never been to Florida. And my brother said, "Oh, you're going to Orlando? You have to go to Walt Disney World." And I'm like, well, okay, I guess. Like, it was never really on my bucket list. And he's a Disney person. He loves Walt Disney World. He goes down several times. And so he goes, "Oh, and I have to come down with you. Like, I have to show you around. There's no way you can do this by yourself." So he did. And I watched, and it was like, again, not only was it kind of expensive to be out there doing all of this, but it was a culture. It was its own culture. And I watched him and I was like, I'm so glad he's here, because he was up in the morning getting us lightning lane tickets, and he was doing this and taking me to rope drops. I'm like, what is rope drop? I don't understand what is happening. He just totally navigated all of it. And I feel like Roots Tech is very similar, that it has its own culture. And the main thing about Walt Disney World is that you go in the door knowing that with the crowds that are around you, you are only going to experience so many things. And it's up to you to kind of curate or pre-plan, prioritize your experience. And the same applies to RootsTech, because you cannot in person, you cannot see all the sessions. It's not possible. Go through now that the app is live, go through and start looking your schedule now. And as we mentioned, the workshops, by the way, just a big, this is kind of a recent tip. They didn't have these all along. This is kind of new, the workshops. So I know the workshops, they did them last year, but there's maybe, from what I've seen in the schedule, maybe half a dozen or so, maybe 8 or 10 if I really look close. I'm not positive how many, but any of the workshops that are going on, they are limited in class size. So you have to get in and say, I'm going, and it's usually limited to 60 people. And so with the attendance rate for Roots Tech being somewhere in the 30,000 range, get in there now. In other words, go now, start looking at the descriptions, prioritize which ones you want to see per slot, 1, 2, 3, and, accept that you're going to get in where you're going to get in. And then from there, just enjoy it. Just really enjoy it. And always make time for the exhibit hall. I love going in there, at least a couple times during the conference and just hanging out, and really taking that in, because that's where you get all the new tech tips and tools coming out for the coming year. Really, really great space, and talk about the energy and the buzz between that and the keynote main stories. Oh, you come out on a genealogy cloud 9. It's fantastic. You're going to love it.
So I'm hearing from you that the Roots Tech culture, the environment, to just let it wash over me. Don't try to
Yes.
fight it. Just like just
Yes.
live in Roots Tech land.
Yes.
Don't try
Exactly.
to understand it. That's just let it
Yes.
be what it
Let it
is.
be.
Okay. That sounds great.
And
That
yeah,
sounds great.
prioritize the ones you absolutely have to see that you'll be really
Yeah.
disappointed if you don't get to. Then
Yeah.
the rest of them just ready to go. My other tip probably would be make sure you go whatever syllabus material exists for the sessions, go download them before the conference so that you've got them and you're done.
Yes. Good
And
idea.
therefore, if you can't make some of those sessions, you actually still have the syllabus from that session that you maybe missed that you really kind of wanted to get to and it didn't quite work out. At least
Yeah.
you got, you've at least got a little bit of taste of what that session might have been about and some of the resources that they talked about. So,
Oh, that's a great idea. Because even if you're doing, if you're doing it online or in person, you want
hmm
that
hmm
handout or that syllabus ahead of time so you can
yeah,
take notes on it or just follow along. I know sometimes my
exactly.
brain drifts a little bit while I'm sitting
Yes.
and paying attention.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a way to stay focused and
Yep.
to make sure that you've comprehended everything and can ask good
Right.
questions if there's questions
Yes.
available.
Yes. And
I just,
sometimes,
yeah,
sorry,
go
and
ahead.
sometimes on the app, trying to you're going through the building with the app and and you're getting to your classes and if you've pre-downloaded the syllabus material to your computer or whatever laptop that you're running around with, it's already there. You can pull it up. It's like
Mm,
it's pre-work, it's pre-planning here, but you'll love it in the long run. You could pull that up per session and it would, instead of trying to do all of that like through the app or on the fly, there's some really
yeah.
good homework you can do for yourself.
Oh, that sounds great. And I love that word that you use, curate. Curate your
Yes,
experience.
curate your
So
experience.
this is a choose your own adventure
Yes.
at the same time. So it's not, yeah, it's just like, you can pre-look, it's like going to a restaurant for the first time, right? Like you can
Yes.
usually look at the menu online before you
Right.
go, and get an idea of what
Yes.
you want. But
Exactly.
yeah, you have to kind of go with the flow and take other people's
Absolutely.
recommendations,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
what's going on. And yeah.
Yes.
I
Yes.
love it. I love it. Now you have me back in the excited camp. I
Right.
vacillate between the excited
Oh,
can't wait and the
yeah.
anxious like what did I get myself into?
Right.
I get to flip back and
Yes.
forth.
Right.
Um,
Oh, yeah. No,
this,
you'll love it. Yeah. Just like, yeah, let it wash over you. You'll really enjoy it. It's great. Great time.
all right. So another unusual question I have for you, because there's a lot of typical information that people can get, standard information like wear comfortable shoes and,
Mhm. Yeah.
hydrate and all that
Hydrate.
stuff.
Yeah.
But I want to know, like, what you talked about the back hall conversations and sort of off the cuff and those spontaneous interactions that we get when we do an in-person event.
Yeah.
Can you name an instance where you had a conversation, with someone that you met at Roots Tech and it just completely changed the trajectory of like your research or your genealogy journey? Like, what, anything like
Mm.
that happened? Maybe you made a new friend,
Lots, lots of new friends, actually. I have to
Yeah.
say over the years, especially, and now are you Roots Tech Media? Are you
No,
part of the
I'm
group?
not.
Oh, okay.
I have to check into getting that.
You're doing that, yeah. Because you're really promoting it well, and you're already that's the qualifier right there. So, um, it's funny just being not only speaker, but I'm also RootsTech Media. So, and I have been for years. And so those are like little groups that, you're constantly kind of, there's even like a VIP section when we do the, for the keynotes. And it's like this little gang that kind of runs around. A couple things I think that I would say that are memorable that stick out over the years. One I have to say was probably the first year when I would say the majority of the people attending actually were more of the developers for all of the different genealogy tools that we were
Interesting.
using. And they had these things called, I think they were called unconferencing sessions. So in between sessions in the exhibit hall, they'd have these little side rooms where, whatever vendor or developer or whatever, they would have a topic. And literally as they went through the conference, they would have this board and somebody could just go up and go, I want to talk about such and such, and here's the time, meet me in this room. And they would show up. And it was great. It was just like this on the fly brainstorming that would happen. So that I remember that was a very unique experience. And they took those away, I want to say probably midway through Rhodes Tech, because
Hmm.
I think then then all the genealogists really began flooding. It was like, is this actually possible to really have these intimate conversations or not? So I remember that those are really fun. But then there was also too, every year they do relatives at RootsTech. So through your phone with Family Search app, you turn on relatives at RootsTech. And what's great is now you can participate in relatives at RootsTech virtually as well. So just that you can see who you're related to, who your closest cousin is among the registration or the people who have registered. And what's fun though is when you're in person, you can actually see if one of those cousins are nearby. And so I remember one of the years there was a guy, so in Kentucky, with the Kentucky Historical Society, we were in partnership with the Kentucky Genealogical Society, and that we used to do this joint program all the time. And one of the guys that was there all the time, um, um, Tom Beatty, he was always there with bells on, right? And I knew Tom; he was always in the sessions and all of this. He would go out to RootsTech, a couple times, like, every other year, every couple of years, whatever, he would go out there. And so anytime I was out there speaking, he was out there. And one of the years that I was out there was when they launched the relatives at RootsTech. And I looked down and he was my seventh cousin. And I said, "Oh my gosh, Tom, are you around?" He was. We took a selfie. It came up, that goes on Twitter. It goes on these big screens. And I said, we had to fly all the way to Salt Lake City to figure out we were cousins. So it was very strange, but it was so much fun. It was like reinforcing the genealogy relationships that we had already had, even in our own backyard. We were able to discover something new about that community and that relationship. Being out in RootsTech, it was just its own buzz. One of the other things too, I love the demo. I have to say the demo stages; those are fun too because you'll get to sit around and watch these vendors, do. And honestly, there's just little conversations that happen, like, "Oh, I didn't know they could do that," and "Oh, well, I like to do this," and so you learn from people that are attending a lot. Like I said, spend some time in that exhibit hall because you strike up some really interesting conversations there. That's for sure.
Oh. I can't wait. I can't wait again. Oh, this is great. Thank you, Cheri, for that wonderful behind the scenes look at RootsTech. Whether you're attending online or in person, a ton of helpful tips. Look for Cheri in a future episode talking about the Sons of the American Revolution Archive and Library and how you can research your patriot ancestors.